What if America's closest ally just decided to quietly shut its wallet, and billions of dollars vanished overnight without a single shot fired or protest sign waved? What if the biggest threat to US power isn't China, Russia, or inflation, but a quiet rebellion taking place right across its northern border? That's exactly what's unfolding in Canada right now. And if you're watching from the US, you might want to sit down, because this isn't just another headline about tariffs or trade spats. This is a consumer-led revolt that could change the entire foundation of US-Canada relations and ripple through the global economy. Think about this for a moment. Canada isn't just a friendly neighbor, it's America's second-largest trading partner, its biggest energy supplier, and a key part of countless US supply chains. For decades, US companies from Tesla to McDonald's to Amazon treated Canada like a reliable cash machine. But now, seemingly overnight, Canadians have started quietly cutting off that cash flow. There are no viral hashtags, no protests clogging streets, no celebrity endorsements. Instead, it's a grassroots boycott playing out one grocery aisle, one road trip, one streaming subscription at a time. And the numbers already show billions in losses. So the question is, what triggered this seismic shift, and why does it matter not just for Canadians or Americans, but for anyone paying attention to the future of global trade? Here's the shocking part: this wasn't sparked by a war, a pandemic, or a natural disaster. It all started with a political decision that many Americans barely noticed. On February 1, 2025, President Donald Trump announced sweeping 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, escalating them in April to include autos and consumer goods. Ottawa responded swiftly, but instead of stopping at counter-tariffs, Canadian leaders and consumers turned this into a silent revolt. Prime Minister MarkCarney made a fiery speech to Parliament saying, "Canada will not be intimidated," but what followed went far beyond politics. It turned into something no trade war strategist could have predicted, a cultural shift where everyday Canadians began voting with their wallets. By mid-2025, an Angus Reid survey revealed that nearly 59% of Canadians were actively avoiding US brands altogether, and another 85% said they'd replace American goods with Canadian alternatives. This wasn't symbolic, it was structural. It wasn't about making a political statement on Twitter, it was about walking past Heinz ketchup for French's, swapping Netflix for Canadian platforms, and driving past the border instead of taking a weekend shopping trip to Buffalo or Seattle. The fallout has been catastrophic. In the first half of 2025 alone, over $2 billion in US exports simply evaporated, not because of trade agreements or sanctions, but because Canadians stopped buying. Cross-border car traffic has plunged by 23%, US tourism revenue is projected to lose $2.1 billion this year, and over 14,000 jobs tied to Canadian tourism are at risk. A hotel manager in Buffalo told CBC News bluntly, "When Canadians stop coming, our weekends go silent." Half of their bookings used to come from Ontario. Now, restaurants, hotels, and retailers in US border towns are reporting record declines. But this isn't just about tourism, it's hitting every sector, from agriculture to streaming services to tech. Take liquor, for example. In March 2025, Ontario's Liquor Board and other provincial regulators delisted all US spirits in retaliation for tariffs. Jack Daniel's, once a staple in Canadian bars, saw sales collapse 66% in weeks. Brown-Forman, the company behind Jack Daniel's, admitted that once you lose shelf space, you may never get it back. That statement isn't hyperbole, it's a death sentence for brand dominance. Fast food is another casualty. McDonald's, an American icon, has reported one of its weakest quarters in years, citing a sharp decline in Canadian performance. Their Canadian franchises have cut orders for Idaho potatoes, forcing US suppliers to cancel shifts and even furlough workers. In Missouri, a packaging plant laid off 200 employees. This is how a boycott starts small, but spreads like wildfire, burning through jobs and revenue across an entire continent. Amazon is facing the same storm. Once untouchable in Canada, the company closed 7 warehouses in Quebec in January, cutting 1,700 jobs after union pressures and falling demand. By mid-February, 41% of Canadians said they planned to reduce or stop using Amazon entirely. Prime subscriptions plummeted, delivery times doubled, and Shopify, a Canadian competitor, surged with a 22% jump in domestic transactions. Tesla is no longer the cool status symbol it was just a year ago. In Quebec and Ontario, Cybertruck order cancellations have spiked above 30%, with many Canadians supporting a moratorium on Tesla sales altogether. Even Heinz ketchup, a product Canadians once considered a household staple, has been replaced almost overnight. Canadian shoppers haven't forgotten when Heinz closed its Ontario plant in 2014, and now they're embracing French's ketchup as a patriotic choice. Oreo cookies, labeled Made in Mexico, sparked outrage and boycotts, amplified by Canadian media. Streaming platforms are also under siege. Netflix and Disney Plus are facing massive subscriber losses after price hikes and password-sharing crackdowns, while Canadian families rally behind local entertainment platforms. Hashtags like #ChooseCanadian are trending, not because of politics, but because Canadians are tired of feeling exploited by US corporations. Even Nike is taking heat, as youth-led campaigns highlight its labor practices and promote Canadian-made alternatives. This is no longer a political fight, it's a cultural movement. Canadians aren't waving flags or chanting slogans. They are quietly dismantling US economic dominance, one cancelled subscription, and one grocery purchase at a time. And the scariest part for Washington is that this may be permanent. Once brands lose consumer trust, once shoppers find alternatives they like, those habits stick. That's not just bad news for corporations, it's a threat to US soft power, trade leverage, and even the dollar's dominance over time. Now let's talk about food, because this is where the story gets really interesting. If you thought tariffs on steel were bad, imagine waking up to find Ontario, Canada's most populous province, has just rejected 150,000 tons of US beef at the border. That's exactly what happened on August 22. Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced a sweeping ban on US beef imports, citing concerns over hormones, labeling, and traceability. He said, "Consumers deserve full transparency. If we cannot guarantee what's in the meat, we won't put it on Ontario shelves." The reaction was immediate and brutal. Within hours, Japan, Germany, and the UAE followed suit, blocking US beef shipments and leaving American ranchers with warehouses full of unsellable inventory. In Nebraska, Cargill halted 2 processing lines, and Tyson Foods confirmed cancelled export orders. The futures market in Chicago saw cattle contracts plunge nearly 7% in 2 days. Meanwhile, Canadian beef producers swooped in to fill the void, signing billion-dollar contracts with Asian and European buyers practically overnight. This wasn't just a trade decision, it was a branding crisis. Canadian beef, already marketed as hormone-free and fully traceable, became the Louis Vuitton of meat in Asian markets. Tokyo's high-end steakhouses proudly display Canadian cuts, while US beef is labeled as risky. A French importer bluntly said, "If Canada won't eat it, why should Paris?" Back in the US, grocery prices skyrocketed. Ground beef jumped $1.90 per pound overnight, and families across the Midwest started cutting steak and brisket from their shopping lists. A Texas barbecue restaurant owner told the Houston Chronicle, "We had to pull brisket off the menu. We can't sell it at $12 a pound." But this wasn't just a beef problem, it was a domino effect. As US beef was shut out of Asia, demand for American soybeans and corn collapsed, wiping billions off Midwest farm income. By September, analysts warned that this wasn't temporary. Canada's beef industry was now locked into multi-year supply contracts with Asian markets, bypassing the US entirely. This is what makes this moment historic. We are witnessing the quiet decoupling of two economies that have been intertwined for over a century. And it's not just about tariffs or labeling. It's about trust. The world watched Ontario reject US beef and thought, if Canada doesn't trust it, why should we? That perception is killing US exports faster than any trade war. Even more shocking, Ottawa has turned this crisis into an opportunity. On August 20th, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a $6.5 billion plan to dominate the global protein market, building new cold storage facilities, rail lines, and shipping corridors to Asia. By 2026, Canada will have multiple direct export routes to Tokyo, Seoul, and Manila that completely bypass US border crossings. While American ranchers scramble to offload frozen inventory, Canada is signing deals for the future. And this isn't limited to meat. Canadian brands are expanding their presence in Asia and Europe while US companies fight to retain their domestic market. Farmers in Iowa and Illinois are dumping corn into ethanol because silos are overflowing, trucking companies are cancelling shipments, and ports are reporting double-digit declines in outbound agricultural goods. Meanwhile, Canadian suppliers are being celebrated as global leaders in food safety and transparency. The silent boycott started in grocery aisles, but it's reshaping global trade. It's eroding America's reputation as the gold standard for food and consumer products. And here's the big question: if Canada, a nation so culturally and economically tied to the US, can walk away this quickly, what's stopping Europe, Asia, or Latin America from doing the same? This isn't just a Canada story, it's a glimpse into a possible future where US brands no longer dominate by default. In Tokyo, Seoul, and Dubai, Canadian beef is now seen as a luxury. In Canadian living rooms, local streaming services are replacing Netflix. And in grocery stores from Vancouver to Halifax, American brands are losing shelf space they may never get back. This is the reality. Tariffs may have been the match, but consumer trust is the wildfire. And wildfires don't stop at borders. The age of unquestioned US economic dominance is over. Whether American corporations can regain that trust, or whether this marks a permanent shift in global consumer behavior, remains to be seen. So, what do you think? Is this just a temporary reaction to tariffs, or are we witnessing the start of a global consumer rebellion against US products and policies? Could this movement spread to Europe, Asia, or Latin America? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because this is a conversation everyone needs to be part of. If you found this video informative, don't forget to hit the like button. It helps us get this story in front of more people. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss updates on the shifting global economy. And share this video with someone who still thinks America is untouchable. The world is changing, and they need to see this.